Welcome back to Cyberspace. I'm your host, Leslie Poston. Today, we're asking, if your brain had subtitles, would you be embarrassed or impressed? Most of us live with a voice in our head. Sometimes it cheers us on, and sometimes it narrates everything we do. Sometimes it's a little too mean for comfort, and right now, even as you're listening to this, there might be another conversation happening entirely in your mind. Maybe you're thinking about what do you need to do later, or you're already forming opinions about what we're talking about today. That voice is your inner monologue. It's one of the most private and powerful parts of your psychological world. It helps you plan, reflect, regulate your emotions, and rehearse your life. But it can also trap you, bully you, or talk you out of things you care about. This episode is about the secret life of that voice, how it forms, how it varies across people and cultures, and how you make peace with it, or even make it work for you. Because here's the thing, that voice isn't just commentary on your life, it's actively shaping who you become. Your inner monologue is with you almost constantly. Right now, while you're listening to me, a part of your brain might be having a parallel conversation. You're not just passively receiving information, you're responding to it, questioning it, connecting it to your own experiences. This is what makes human cognition so remarkably sophisticated. We don't just think, we think about thinking. We talk ourselves through tasks, imagine conversations that haven't happened yet, and replay ones that have. We give ourselves instructions. Don't forget to pick up milk. We offer encouragement. You can handle this presentation. We provide harsh critiques. Why did you say that? Some people think primarily in words, with a constant stream of verbal commentary running through their mind. Others think more in pictures, sounds, or physical sensations. But most of us have some form of internal speech, even if we're not always aware of it. What's fascinating is how unconscious this process usually is. Your inner voice feels like the background noise of being alive. It's so constant that you might not notice it's there. It's like the hum of an air conditioner. You only become aware of it when it stops. But this seemingly automatic chatter plays a profound role in how you make decisions, regulate emotions, solve problems, and form your sense of self. Think about the last time you had to make a difficult decision. Chances are you didn't just weigh the options silently. You probably had entire conversations with yourself. If I take this job, I'll make more money, but the commute will be terrible, and what if I hate it? But then again, staying here means this internal dialogue isn't just reflecting your thought process. It's actually organizing your thoughts. It helps you work through complexity in a way that pure intuition or emotion alone just can't manage. As psychologists, we define inner speech as the silent internal use of language to think and self-regulate. It's not the same as hearing voices or auditory hallucinations. This is your own voice, generated by your own mind, talking to you in a process you control, even when it doesn't always feel that way. But how does this extraordinary ability develop? We're not born with an inner monologue. Babies don't have little voices in their heads giving them running commentary of their whole day. This capacity emerges through a developmental process that transforms social interaction into private thought. The developmental pathway goes something like this. Young children talk out loud constantly. They narrate their play, giving themselves instructions, and working through problems verbally, out loud. Now I'm putting the red block on top. No, that doesn't work. I'll try the blue one. If you've seen any of the little kids skiing videos on TikTok, and you've heard parents put a mic in their kid's helmet, you can hear these cute, adorable 3 and 4-year-old children narrating their way down the entire mountain while they ski. And this isn't just cute kid behavior. It's cognitive scaffolding in action. They're using language as a tool to organize their thinking and to guide their behavior. As children develop, This external speech gradually moves inward. First, they might whisper to themselves. Then they mouth their words silently. Finally, speech becomes fully internal. But here's the crucial part: the function remains the same. That inner voice is still serving as a cognitive tool, helping to organize thought, maintain attention, and regulate behavior. It's just moved from the outside world into the private realm of consciousness. This process shows us something profound about the nature of human thinking. We don't just use language to communicate with others, we use it to communicate with ourselves. We've essentially internalized the social process of conversation and turned it into a tool for individual cognition. Inner speech isn't just a reflection of thought, it's actively shaping how we think. When you talk through a problem internally, you're not just describing your thought process. You're structuring it. The linear, sequential nature of language is forcing you to organize your ideas in real time, one after another. This can help clarify confusing situations, work through logical sequences, and hold multiple pieces of information in working memory simultaneously. But inner speech serves many functions beyond problem solving. It's how we rehearse for future events, process past experiences, and regulate our emotional responses. It's the mechanism by which we give ourselves instructions, encouragement, or criticism. It's also how we simulate social interactions, imagining what others might think or say in various situations. Here's where things get really interesting. Not everyone experiences the inner monologue the same way. This might come as a shock if you're someone with a constant stream of verbal thought, but some people have very little internal dialogue. Others have none at all. Research using sophisticated sampling methods has revealed enormous variation in how people experience their own minds. Some individuals report rich, constant internal narratives, like having a radio talk show running in their head all day. Others experience inner speech only occasionally when working through specific problems or in particular situations. Still others report that their thinking happens through images, sensations, or abstract concepts, without much verbal content at all. This variation isn't just academic curiosity, it has real implications for how people navigate the world. Someone without much inner speech might process information more holistically or intuitively. They might be less likely to second-guess themselves or get caught in loops of rumination. On the flip side, they might not benefit from the organizing and regulatory functions that inner speech can provide. Cultural differences add another layer of complexity. Different cultures have varying attitudes toward introspection and self-reflection. Some traditions encourage detailed internal dialogue as a path to wisdom and self-understanding. Others view excessive self-focus as potentially harmful, emphasizing present moment awareness or community-oriented thinking instead. Language structure itself influences inner speech patterns. If you grew up bilingual or multilingual, you might find that your inner monologue switches between languages depending on context, emotion, or the type of thinking you're doing. Some people report that different languages access different aspects of their personality or different types of memories. These neurological and cultural variations remind us of something critical. The way you think internally is not a moral trait or a sign of intelligence. It's simply one of many cognitive styles shaped by biology, development, and culture. There's no right way to have an inner voice or to not have one. For people with ADHD or anxiety disorders, inner monologues can feel less like a helpful companion and more like a chaotic committee meeting where everyone's talking at once. Thoughts ricochet from topic to topic. Tasks are started, narrated, interrupted by other thoughts, abandoned, restarted with different commentary, and then dropped again for something entirely new. If you have ADHD, your inner voice might not provide the same organizational support that it does for neurotypical brains. A guide helping you through tasks It might jump around and get distracted by interesting tangents or simply fail to kick in when you need it the most. You might find yourself needing to talk out loud to organize complex tasks, essentially using external speech because your internal speech is not providing adequate cognitive scaffolding. This is not a character flaw or a sign of laziness. It's a brain doing its best to manage challenges with working memory, attention regulation, and impulse control. The ADHD brain is just wired differently, and sometimes that means the usual cognitive tools, they work differently too. For people with anxiety and some trauma survivors, inner speech can become dominated by worry, catastrophic thinking, or hypervigilance. The inner voice might consistently scan for potential threats, replay embarrassing moments, or generate endless what-if scenarios. What if I said that wrong thing in that meeting? What if my boss thinks I'm incompetent? Or what if I get fired? Then what if I can't find another job? This anxious inner dialogue isn't choosing to be unhelpful. It's actually trying to protect you. The anxiety system is designed to help you prepare for and avoid danger. The problem is that in our modern world, anxiety often goes into overdrive, treating social embarrassment or work stress as if they were life-threatening emergencies. Understanding these patterns is the first step toward working with them, rather than against them. For ADHD brains, this might mean accepting that you need external supports. Writing things down, talking through problems out loud, using apps or systems to provide the organization that inner speech might not supply consistently, or whatever method works for you, because as ADHD people will tell you, just telling them to get a planner is not the answer. For anxious minds, it often means learning to recognize when your inner voice has shifted from helpful problem solving to unproductive spinning. The goal isn't to eliminate the voice entirely. Anxiety often contains useful information about things that need attention. It's about learning to work with it more skillfully. We've established that we all talk to ourselves, but what exactly are we saying, and does it matter? Sports psychology has given us fascinating insights into how inner speech influences performance. Athletes who use positive instructional self-talk consistently outperform those who don't. Keep your eye on the ball, you've got this, stay relaxed through your shoulders. Simple phrases like this do more than just remind you of technique. They actually activate motivation centers in your brain and help maintain focus under pressure. But the benefits extend far beyond athletics. The way you talk to yourself influences everything from your ability to persist through difficult tasks to how quickly you recover from setbacks. Encouraging self-talk doesn't just feel better. It actually changes your physiological response to stress and challenge. Unfortunately, for many of us, inner monologue is anything but encouraging. The inner voice can become a harsh critic, constantly pointing out flaws, questioning decisions, and predicting failure. Like, you always mess this up. Everyone can see that you don't know what you're doing, and why did you even try? This critical inner voice often develops for understandable reasons. Maybe you had parents or teachers who were highly critical of you. Maybe you learned that being hard on yourself was a way to motivate improvement or avoid disappointing others. Maybe criticism became a way to try to control outcomes in an unpredictable world. But here's what research shows us. Harsh self-criticism is actually counterproductive for most goals. It increases stress hormones, reduces cognitive flexibility, and makes you more likely to give up when faced with difficulties. People who are kind to themselves in their inner dialogue show greater resilience, more creativity in problem solving, and better long-term performance across various domains. The tone of your voice also influences your sense of identity. When the internal commentary is consistently negative, people begin to believe that critical narrative represents truth rather than habit. They start to see themselves through the lens of their harshest internal critic, forgetting that this voice is just one perspective among many possible ones. This is where the concept of self-compassion becomes important. Self-compassion isn't about lowering standards or making excuses. It's about changing the emotional tone of how you relate to your own struggles and imperfections. Instead of, I'm such an idiot for making that mistake, self compassionate inner speech might say, well, that was disappointing, but everyone makes mistakes, so what can I learn from this? One of the most sophisticated functions of inner speech is its role in social simulation. Your inner voice doesn't just help you think about tasks and problems, it helps you navigate the complex social world by allowing you to imagine and rehearse interactions before they happen. Think about the last time you had to have a difficult conversation. Chances are you probably ran through various versions of it in your mind first. You might have imagined what the other person would say, rehearsed your responses, and even prepared for different possible outcomes. If they get defensive, I'll say this. If they seem negative, I'll say that. And if they seem receptive, I can bring up this other issue as well. This social rehearsal isn't just worry or overthinking. It's a sophisticated cognitive ability that allows you to engage in perspective taking, empathy, and strategic planning all at once. When you imagine how someone might respond to your words, you're activating the same neural networks involved in actual social interaction. You're essentially running social simulation to test different approaches before committing to an action. Your inner voice also helps you process social experiences after they happen. You replay conversations, analyze interactions, and try to understand what went well or what you might do differently next time. This post hoc analysis helps you learn from social experiences and refine your understanding of relationship dynamics. The social simulation function of inner speech also connects you to your sense of identity and belonging. Much of our internal dialogue involves imagining what others think of us, predicting their reactions, or rehearsing explanations for our behavior. In a sense, we carry internalized versions of important people in our lives, and we have conversations with these imagined others as we navigate decisions and challenges. This can be incredibly valuable for developing empathy and social skills, but it can also become problematic when the imagined voices become overly critical, or when social simulation turns into obsessive rumination. Some people get trapped in endless loops of replaying past conversations, or imagining future conflicts, spinning scenarios that become increasingly divorced from reality. The key is learning to use the social simulation function of inner speech skillfully, taking advantage of its benefits for planning and empathy while recognizing when it's shifted from helpful preparation to unproductive worry. Sometimes our inner voice isn't just occasionally critical. It becomes genuinely cruel. For some people, the internal monologue sounds like an abusive relationship happening entirely within their own mind. The voice might attack their appearance, their capabilities, their worth as a person. It might predict their failure, highlight every flaw, and dismiss every success as luck or fraud. This kind of harsh inner criticism often has roots in early experiences. Children naturally internalize the voices of important caregivers. If those voices were frequently critical, shaming, or rejecting, that criticism can become part of their internal landscape long into adulthood. The harsh parent or teacher becomes an inner critic that continues their work, even when the original person is no longer present. Trauma can also shape inner speech patterns in complex ways. People who've experienced trauma might develop hypervigilant inner voices that constantly scan for danger, criticism, or signs of rejection. The inner monologue becomes dominated by threat detection rather than supportive guidance or neutral observation. Cultural and systemic pressures contribute as well. If you belong to a marginalized group, your inner voice might internalize societal messages about your worth or capabilities. The broader culture's prejudices can become part of your internal dialogue, creating additional layers of self-criticism and doubt. Perfectionism often plays a role as well. The inner voice becomes focused on impossible standards, constantly pointing out how current performance falls short of some idealized version. This perfectionist inner critic often masquerades as motivation, but It typically creates paralysis, procrastination, and chronic dissatisfaction instead. When inner speech becomes dominated by cruelty and criticism, it stops serving its adapted function. Instead of helping with problem solving and emotional regulation, it becomes a source of additional stress and pain. People might start avoiding challenges just to escape their own internal criticism, or they might push themselves to exhaustion, trying to appease an inner voice that's never satisfied. Recognizing when your inner voice has become toxic is the first step toward changing the pattern. Often, people don't realize how harsh their self-talk has become because it feels normal to them. It's the only voice they've ever known. Learning to notice and name internal criticism can be the beginning of developing a different relationship with your mind. The good news about inner speech is that it is not fixed. Just as you develop your current patterns of self-talk over time, you can develop new ones. Your brain's capacity for neuroplasticity means that the neural pathways underlying inner speech can change with conscious practice. The first step is developing awareness. Start paying attention to your inner voice without trying to change it immediately. Notice when it's helpful versus when it's harsh. Observe whether it sounds like you or like someone else from your past. Pay attention to the tone, the content, and the timing of your internal commentary. Some people find it helpful to actually write down what their inner voice says, especially during difficult moments. Seeing those thoughts on paper can provide perspective on whether they're reasonable, helpful, or unnecessarily cruel. You might be shocked by how harsh the dialogue becomes when you're not consciously monitoring it. Another powerful technique is learning to respond to your inner critic rather than simply accepting what it says. You can literally argue back and say, "That's not accurate. I've succeeded at difficult things before." Or you might try a gentler approach. "I know you're trying to protect me from failure, but this level of criticism isn't helpful." Some people benefit from giving their inner critic a name or a persona. This creates psychological distance and reminds you that the critical voice is just one part of your mental landscape, not the whole truth about who you are. You might imagine your critic as a worried parent, a drill sergeant, or even as a separate character entirely. Once you can see it as a part rather than the whole, you can choose when to listen to it and when to set it aside. Developing a more compassionate inner voice often requires concerted effort. You might need to actively cultivate the tone you'd use with a good friend facing the same challenges. What would you say to someone you cared about who was struggling with the same problem? How would you encourage them without dismissing the difficulty of their situation? Mindfulness practices can also help by creating space between you and your inner commentary. Instead of being completely identified with whatever your inner voice is saying, you can learn to observe it with some detachment. "I notice I'm having very critical thoughts about my presentation tomorrow." This observer stance gives you more choice about how to respond. Meditation is also good for this, and you might think that your inner voice is too constant to meditate, but part of meditation is learning to let a thought go. So incorporate that into these techniques as well. And remember, changing inner speech patterns takes time and repetition. You're essentially rewiring neural pathways that may have been established for decades. Be patient with the process and celebrate small improvements. The goal isn't to eliminate all negative thoughts or criticism. Some internal feedback is genuinely useful. The goal is to make your inner voice more balanced, more accurate, and ultimately more helpful in living the life you want to live. Your inner monologue is one of your most constant companions. With some attention and practice, it can become a supportive ally instead of a harsh critic. And it doesn't have to be perfect, it just needs to be honest, reasonably kind, and genuinely helpful in navigating the complexities of being a human. Thanks for listening to this episode of PsyberSpace. I'm your host, Leslie Poston, signing off. Until next time, stay curious and maybe even listen a little more closely to the voice in your head. You might be surprised by what you hear. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and send it to a friend that you think might enjoy it as well.